Michigan, Studies in God's Wonderland, Part 3. Noah's Wandering Children in Michigan. You know, it's truly amazing what you can discover along Michigan's lakes and rivers and the woods, especially below the dirt. You might say that the earth beneath our feet is God's storage area. In walking through the woods in Oscoda, I have found many wonderful artifacts of the Native American Indians that dwelt here so long before the first Europeans braved these shores. I have taken from the ground arrowheads, stone knives and axes, as well as my favorite, pottery. Many hours have been spent collecting these bits and pieces of former times, and I used to wonder as I found these relics just where the Native American people truly did come from. One thing is for certain, they did not evolve from the ancient ape named Lucy over in Africa. Like you and I, they descended from Adam and Eve, and then, of course, from Noah. It did not take long after the flood for Noah's boys to begin spreading out across planet Earth, and eventually they made their way into Michigan. Unfortunately, they began worshiping many false gods. These people were ingenious and put to full use all the things God had placed around them, and as such left a rich legacy of artifacts behind for us to learn about them. At one time I dug into a spot where a hearth had been. That is where a fire was built to prepare meals. I found the bones of birds, deer, fish, and turtles, so I knew what they took of the abundance of God around them. Now imagine how they lived. To make their cooking pots, they had to dig clay out of the ground and process it. They also made the clay into smoking pipes. To make their arrows and stone tools, they had to locate good quality stone and chip the tool out using other stones and deer antlers. They lived in lodges made of bark, usually birch. Theirs was not an easy existence. The gods they worshipped were of no help, of course. They worshipped spirits called manitos, and they believed that everything living or inanimate had such a spirit. But even so, God did not turn his back on them. He still loved them, as is attested to by the fact that he gave them everything they needed to survive. The lesson that we can find in this is that the Michigan Indians found themselves in a woodland wilderness in bark homes with many dangers and hardships, just in order to survive. As stated, they worshipped false gods, sometimes almost comical gods. Their ancestors fell away from the true and living God after the Great Flood, and so look at the condition that they found themselves in. This sort of thing happens to Christians all too often, myself included. I would be lying if I said that this had never happened to me. We turn our backs on God, walk off, and decide to do things on our own. And for me anyways, this always leads to destruction and places me in a spiritual wilderness. For our lives to be complete and fulfilled, we must not go into that wilderness, but rather draw into God and stay in his perfect will for our lives. After all, he lovingly created us and knows what's very best for us. The Word of God teaches us that we must draw into God, seek him, and he will draw unto us. We find ourselves in that spiritual wilderness. The only wise thing to do is to talk to our Father in prayer and seek out his will through his Word, the Bible.